Hey there, cinephiles. Today I'm going to talk about every movie that I've seen in May. There are so many movies that I see throughout the months that I wish I could tell you guys about, but currently I think this is the best way to tell you guys about which movies I like and didn't like. Basically, these film diaries will consist of mini reviews for every single movie that I see within a month. But alright, let's get into my film diary for May 2023. The first movie of the month I saw, and the first movie I saw being the age of 24, was Hypnotic. That's not me describing the movie, that's just the title, because wow, it was bad. It was a regal mystery movie from director Robert Rodriguez, and it starred Ben Affleck, and basically it's about these people who know how to alter the chemistry in other people's minds and essentially control them. But there's about 15 twists that change what this movie is actually about throughout the movie, and by the end of it, it becomes a comedy. It's so weird. It was a mix of boring but also being laughably bad, and one movie that I will forget and basically have forgotten already. Next, I rewatched Call Me By Your Name for the first time since 2017-2018, and honestly, it's such a heartbreaking film in such a satisfying way. It's so beautiful to look at, and what else do you expect from Luca Guadagnino? But the biggest thing about this movie was definitely Michael Stuhlbarg and how he just happened to be completely forgotten by the Oscars, which is one of the biggest travesties of the Oscars ever. In this movie, he probably delivers one of my favorite performances of all time, and it kind of makes me want to rewatch Call Me By Your Name again already. Then I followed it up with a rewatch of Clue. Clue is one of my favorite comedies, if not my favorite comedy of all time. I'm a sucker for murder mysteries and board games, and Clue is basically my favorite board game, so make that into a genuinely good movie. I mean, come on, I love this movie. It's just such a part of me. There's so many iconic lines like the flames on the side of my face. The final line of this movie, depending which ending you get, is one of my favorite final lines of all time. It's just such a great comedy, and I understand that comedy is subjective, so it's not for everyone, but it just works on such a deep level for me. Also, Tim Curry is just amazing in this. After that, I saw Return of the Jedi in its re-release in theaters, and this was actually such a cool experience. This is my favorite Star Wars film ever, so getting to see the Ewoks on the big screen and Endor and everything that happens, it's just so wonderful to have that experience now. This was definitely one of my most rewatched movies as a child, so that's probably why it's my favorite, but there's just something about this movie that has a great charm, and I just love it every time I see it. And I'm glad I got to see it for the 40th anniversary re-release. Then I rewatched both Guardians of the Galaxy and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. It was really just a refresher for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Going back to these movies, I might have seen them a couple too many times because they felt okay. They weren't great movies to begin with, but I did like them more back then. I don't know if I just grew up or I've just seen them too many times, but it was just a fine experience. I do enjoy these characters, but I think the overall film is bogged down by not looking as great as it should, and also the overall stories not being as tight and concise as they could be. Then I saw The Muppets Take Manhattan. I'm slowly but surely going through all the Muppets movies. Now, this isn't one of my favorites, but it's also not one of the worst Muppet movies. And peak cinema is literally anytime anyone is playing Miss Piggy in a Miss Piggy suit. It's just so obvious and fun, and it gets me every single time. Then I rewatched one of my favorite movies of all time, Moulin Rouge. A rewatch of this movie is always so satisfying to me. I basically want to rewatch this now. I know so many people are turned off by this style of filmmaking, but it's just so for me, and I love the characters, I love the music, I just love everything about this movie. It's a near perfect film for me, and well, just go watch it if you haven't, because it's just amazing and wonderful and top 4 for me. Next, I saw Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in IMAX. I already did a review for this, so if you haven't seen it yet, please check it out. But basically, it's a good movie. I think it's the best of the Guardians films, and I still want to rewatch this. I haven't had the chance to yet, but it was a really good time, although heartbreaking too. I then followed it up with Your Name. This is a really good movie, and I know I'm late to the party, but I'm glad I finally watched it. With a few tweaks, this could have been a film for the ages. As is, though, I sat in silence for minutes after the credits ended. It's just so moving and really good, and I need to rewatch this as soon as possible. And then I saw Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. This movie wasn't personally for me, but I'm so glad it exists for its target audience. There are going to be many people that find this movie relatable, and I'm glad it exists for you. It's always good to see a movie that shows the similar struggles that you're going through just as a living person. And it's a solid movie. It's not the greatest thing in the world on a filmmaking standpoint, but many people that are in its target audience will love this movie as is. In the same day, I follow that movie up with Evil Dead Rise, and it's a mean movie. It is so cold. It is horrific in the sense that it's not necessarily scary, but it's just so unsettling and off-putting. It's a good movie, don't get me wrong, but I'm okay with never seeing this movie again. And if you love this movie, I understand your taste now. I also saw behind the scenes of some certain bloody things that were practical effects, and you had to have a strong stomach to be on that set, I'll tell you that much. Next up, I rewatched Game Night. Where was this quality for Dungeons & Dragons? It's the same filmmakers, and I know a lot of people like Dungeons & Dragons, but it's nowhere near as good as Game Night. Game Night just works so much better for me from a group standpoint as well. I don't know, it's just 1,000 times funnier. Somehow the action sequences I prefer in this one, which there aren't many, but the ones that are in here, I think it just works better. But yeah, if you haven't seen Game Night and you like Dungeons & Dragons, I definitely suggest watching this movie. Even if you just like comedies, this is one of the best comedies from the past 10 years, I'd say. And then I rewatched Dune. It slaps every time I watch it. I'm so excited for that sequel, and whoever says that's a bad trailer, you're just wrong. And you know who I'm talking to. And I swear, if Dune 2 is not good, I'm going to be so sad because I love the first movie. And the only reason it's not at a higher score currently is because it does have that part 1 thing. So I kind of need to see part 2 to fully get the full image, basically. But I cannot say how excited I am for it to be November already so I can watch Dune part 2. And if it's as great as the first one, then this might be my new Star Wars. Next, I watched Tangerine for the first time. This is Sean Baker's first well-known film. If you don't know him, he did The Florida Project and Red Rocket. It's always interesting to see a director's earlier work and see how raw they are, but still seeing that style that they have. Tangerine is definitely not his best work, and I'm glad that it's not. It's always nice to see a director's earlier stuff with less resources and less experience just to see how they're figuring out film and how to tell the story over a feature amount of time. Overall, not a bad movie, and I suggest watching it if you haven't yet and you've liked his other stuff. And then I saw Symbiote Psychotaxiplasm Take 1. If you want to know what it's like to work on not a great set, this is the movie for you. There was so many relatable moments in this movie, and I kind of wish now that every time I do work on a not so great set that I have this documentary crew following me around. I definitely need to watch Take 2 because I think that came out like in 2015, whereas this movie came out in the 60s, I believe. But it goes to show that bad sets are timeless. And then I saw Fast X in 40X. If you haven't seen our last video, this is the latest review that we have, but it is a wild experience to have seen this in 40X. If it's still in 40X around you, please, I implore you to watch it. It's an experience that I wish upon everyone. And then I saw Carmen. It was a last second decision to watch this movie, and I'm glad I did. I didn't even know it came out, and the trailer was... It's not a great trailer, but it was still intriguing enough for me to watch. Also, Paul Mescal's in this movie, so I gotta support the boy. And for as many times as this movie could have been a masterpiece, you do feel that directorial debut-ness of it. I can't wait to see what this guy does next, though, because there are a lot of interesting things that he does within this movie. And it looks pretty good, too, for being such a small budget. This is definitely one of my favorite watches of this month, so if it's in a theater near you, please go and check it out. Next, I saw The Blob. It needed more Blob. I understand it was the 50s, and there was a lot of techniques that you clearly see them using miniatures and stuff like that on this, but it needed more of the titular character. Instead, we got Steve McQueen, who I think at the time was 28, playing a 17-year-old, and he does not pass for a 17, I'll tell you that. But it's still a little fun time to have in the background. That's about it. And then I saw Muppets from Space. It is insanely disappointing. There's little to none original music, which makes me sad because all of these Muppet movies are musicals. And it's the one about space in which you don't do original music for. And even then, this movie just goes in a few different ways, but it doesn't nail any of them. It started off promising with a basic Noah's Ark and Noah rejecting Gonzo, but it's ultimately forgettable. This is one of the most recent movies I watched, and I've already forgotten most of it because I was just so disappointed. I don't know, this one just kind of made me sad, if I'm being honest. And then I saw Escape from Tomorrow, which is an upcoming video, so please stay tuned for that. But basically, it's a bad movie. And to end my month, I saw You Hurt My Feelings. This was a movie that I thought would be in contention for my favorite of the year so far. However, it was severely lacking. It's an okay dramedy about being in your 50s and all the relationships that you have and the white lies you tell to keep those relationships afloat. Which in concept sounds great, but it just felt awkward and not in the good way. It feels a little clunky and it feels a little like it's meandering way too much. And it just wasn't a great end to the month. But alright, that's every movie I watched in May of 2023. I also did watch the final season of Barry, which, not the strongest season of the show, but the ending was pretty well done. And I did like what it had to say about certain things in our world. I just really need Bill Hader to make a movie next. But alright, let me know your thoughts on any of the movies I discussed here, and let me know your favorite first time watch in May. And drop some recommendations down in the comments below for me to watch next month. And also follow me on Letterboxd if you want to see the movies I watch in real time. Be sure to follow Yeti Films on our socials. As always, thank you guys for watching, liking, and subscribing. Stay tuned for more Yeti Films content, and I'll catch you later.